Hello students, today's expert session is on examination strategies for CBSE Mathematics class 10. We'll be taking up a few generic strategies and tips and tricks that could prove beneficial for you to ace the class 10th examination. Now when I talk about strategies, there is a disclaimer that says that no strategy applies to all. So whatever we discuss over here, you have to judge what suits you best and what is applicable in your case and choose accordingly. What we can confirm is that since this is all these tips and tricks or strategies, they are a crux of several years of experience that we have in this domain. So I assume that this would be very helpful session for you, and this is going to be a very short session. Also, if you have any comments or if you have any queries, you can type it in the comment box and post it to us. Our team is sitting right here and it's going to respond to you. And besides that, even if you have a question later on after the session, you can just shoot us a mail, and the email address is contact@urtutors.com. It's CONTACT at URTUTORS.com. And we also have a phone number that will be that will be shown at the end of the session. And you can also send us the query on Facebook or whatever social media handle that you know of related to your tutor. So we'll be responding to all your queries, and let's begin with this particular session. So to begin with the session, let's just first understand what was the marks distribution for the different chapters in the 2018 paper. You would know that starting 2018, the syllabus covers the entire course. So it's no more the term-wise distribution, and the entire syllabus is going to come. So it's very imperative for us to know which chapters are important and which are less important. More important and less important in terms of the marks that are asked, the questions that are asked from these chapters. So we basically tabulated here all the chapters and the marks that are asked for each of these chapters. So you have here linear equations from which 11 mark questions are asked. Triangles, you have 15. You have trigonometry there from where 11 mark questions were asked. Surface area 12, and you have statistics from which 11 mark question was asked. So these are the top 5 chapters that were asked in the 2018 paper. And if you look at previous year papers prior to 2010, when the entire board syllabus used to come, when the entire year syllabus used to come in the board examinations, the distribution was more or less similar to the distribution that was asked in the 2018 paper. Now, one thing that you might be getting confused with is that the paper is 80 mark paper, but here we have if you total the entire thing, it will be 104. And the reason for that is we have also included the optional questions here. So there would be questions, for example, linear equations, if two questions were asked as an alternate. So you have question number 21. The first part is linear equations, and the OR part also has linear equations. So we have added it and written over here. So it basically, the list over here, it actually has the total number of marks that have been accorded to each chapter, and not based on the number of questions or the marks that you need to attempt. So this is why the total that you see over here is 104, although the actual paper is an 80 mark paper. But it does not take away from the fact that these 5 chapters are the most important from the point of view of the chapters, the priority of chapters that you need to decide. So when I say that, also when I say that these 5 chapters are most important and the others are not, it does not mean that you should be careless about them. Because for example, you have this heights and distance. Heights and distance, you always have a 4 mark question in the section D. Now these, for the past few years, the questions are simple, and they require you to draw a figure, and the angles are standard angles, so you know the standard values, trigonometric ratio values, and the calculation is very simple. So it's very easy to score a heights and distance problem. So it's 4 marks for the taking. So you must concentrate and you must be thorough with all the problems that were asked in the previous 5 to 7 years, and also the NCERT questions that are there in your book. So although I'm saying that 5 chapters are more important from the point of view of marks, there are some chapters from which questions will always be asked, and just by understanding the concepts a bit, you would be able to score there. Also, the 2018 paper was of the medium level, out of which the 65 marks were of an easy nature, easy as in you need to understand, you need to know the formula, etc. But they were direct applications. And 15 questions were, you could say that they were of the difficult level. Difficult level, but not out of your syllabus. Okay, so the 80 mark distribution was such that 65 was from the easy bracket and 15 were difficult questions. So we would rate this particular 2018 paper in the medium range. So it was not a tough paper, it was a medium level paper. And we have seen in the last few years that generally the mathematics paper is always of the medium level. So coming 2019 also, you can be pretty sure that the paper will fall in this range only, because traditionally for the past few years this is the range in which it falls. So be prepared for that. If you're looking to ace the examination, the 15 marks is going to be the real differentiator for you. Okay. Okay, now the expected marks distribution. Based on the analysis of the previous year papers, we have analyzed probably last 10-15 year papers, and we figured out that there are a few chapters from which 1 to 4 mark questions are asked. There are chapters from which 4 to 6 mark questions are asked. There are chapters from which 6 to 10 mark questions are asked, and there are chapters from which 10 plus mark questions are asked. Again, when I say 10 plus marks, I include the optional questions as well. Okay, so this is how they are distributed. So you have circles, quadratic, polynomials, probability, and construction. They These would be 0 to 4 mark questions. Zero, generally all the chapters are asked, so it will be in the range 1 to 4 mark questions. Quadratic equations, generally you get a question in the section A, 1 mark question, and probably if they want to give a weightage of 4 marks to quadratic equations, they'll probably ask you a 3 mark question in section C. Similarly, for circles, probability you get a question in section A and probably section B also. Construction, you'll probably get it in section C or section D. And for real numbers and area related to circles, you could get it in the range 4 to 6. Heights and distance will always be one question that will be there in the section D most probably. In the 6 to 10 mark segment, you have arithmetic progression and coordinate geometry. Now, coordinate geometry, you have to be very thorough with drawing graphs, locating the points, marking the axis properly, writing the scale properly, and the same holds true for the linear equation in two variables. You have to be really correct in the way you draw the graph, because that is where you would be able to score. So the graphs have to be very neat. Some concepts that you need to look at in coordinate geometry would be collinearity, the area of triangle. You have three coordinates of a parallelogram given. You have to find out the fourth vertex. The area of a quadrilateral, you find it out by drawing a diagonal and finding the area of two triangles. So these are the questions that are generally asked in coordinate geometry. In arithmetic progression, it is more about nth term of a sequence or the sum to n terms of a series. So these formula you need to remember. For real numbers also, rational and irrational number, the difference, and how you prove whether a given number is irrational, all these questions are important. For triangles, again, you need to, this time they had asked Pythagoras theorem. So Pythagoras theorem direct proof might not come, but you must go through the basic proportionality theorem, uh, areas related to similar triangles, and we expect some questions on application of Pythagoras theorem in this particular year paper. And then you have trigonometry. Trigonometry, this is other than heights and distance. So you have trigonometrical ratios and identities that you need to be thorough with. Surface area and volume is a very important chapter, and it requires you to be very good with calculation. So when you are practicing in the next 1.5 months, make sure that you are not only thorough with the problems, with the formulas in surface area and volumes, but you also completely solve the questions, because lots of times we see that students tend to just apply the formula and leave the calculation when they are practicing, saying that they would be able to do the calculation correctly in the examination if they have been able to apply the formula correctly. That is half the job done only. Okay, so the half job is to actually find the correct value. So whenever you are practicing also, do not act lazy, get it to the final answer and check whether the answer is right or not, because surface area and volume is tremendously important, and all the questions will involve heavy calculations and you must be good at it. Okay, so although it's a very a boring process. But again, in mathematics, you need to be good with calculations as well, not just application, but also calculations. So you have to be thorough with that. Statistics, again, if you remember the formula, and if you remember, if you just solve a few questions, the NCERT questions and some previous year questions, you would be good to score the entire in this entire section. So statistics is a very easy chapter, provided you know the formula, provided you know how to apply them, because the calculations will not be very difficult, but again, you need to be thorough with the formula. In fact, in 2018, the questions were asked from previous years. I guess it was from 2000 to 2005, a couple of questions were asked from that paper, and they did not even change the data. So this is how they asked. I mean, you could get a question directly from a previous year paper or from the NCERT book. So you should be very good. You should have solved all those problems. That's why I said you must solve these problems before you go to the examination hall. That will not just give you the confidence, but also make sure that you get at least 30-40 mark questions that you have already seen earlier. Okay. Okay, so now the next critical question that we all have in our mind is what to do 1 month before the examination. Definitely everybody is going to study, but what is going to be the differentiator is the strategies that you are going to adopt before the examination. So the first thing that you need to do is that you must start solving 2 sample papers per week per subject, and also the previous year papers, one previous paper at least. So what we are saying is that 3 papers, 2 sample papers and 1 previous year paper should suffice for each subject per week. But if you are not able to achieve that goal, and if you also have other resources from which you need to practice, then probably 1 sample paper and 1 previous paper is mandatory per subject per week. Okay, so you have to take that call for yourself, because many questions are going to be asked from the previous year papers, and the sample papers would also include questions from the previous years, so that will also give you lots of practice. So sample papers and previous year papers both are very important, and you should take at least one each per subject per week. Also, be thorough with your NCERT questions. That is also very important. Ask the questions directly from the NCERT book. So you must be thorough with all the questions, all the examples from the book. Remember the formulas and critical results. The formulas need to be remembered. If you don't remember the formulas, it will be very difficult for you to derive those formulas right then and there in the examination hall. So you be certain that the formulas need to be clear. You must write it down in a notebook or somewhere, and you must go through these formulas regularly. Probably every 3 or 4 days you must go through the formulas, so that you are thorough with all the formulas, not just in mathematics but also all the other subjects. Similar is the case for the critical results. For example, Pythagoras theorem is a very important concept, and they had asked the proof for Pythagoras theorem in 2018. So probably this year they will not ask you the direct proof for Pythagoras theorem, but they might ask you applications related to Pythagoras theorem. So basic proportionality theorem, areas of similar triangles, uh, application of Pythagoras theorem, all these things are critical and important results or important concepts that you must study and you must be thorough with. The third thing is maintaining speed and accuracy. One thing that you have to understand, that the paper that takes 3 hours to solve on the examination day should be solved in not more than 2 hours and 45 minutes in the safe confines of your home. So what I would suggest is any sample paper or any previous year paper that you take, try to finish it off in 2 hours and 30 minutes flat, and 15 minutes religiously devote to revision for each of these papers. So any sample paper or any previous year paper that you take up at home, try to solve it in 2 hours and 30 minutes and keep 15 minutes for revision, because on the examination day your speed is automatically going to go a bit down due to the anxiety or whatever, the pressure that will be there. So you will slow down a bit. So if you are regular with your practice, so that you're able to practice in 2 hours and 30 minutes and 15 minutes you devote to revision, on the examination day you'll be able to complete the paper within 3 hours. The average time that a student would take in solving a mathematics paper in the boards is around 2 hours 45 minutes only. So you have to be practicing in the range of 2 hours and 30 minutes. So any sample paper or any previous year paper that you take, try to attempt it in 2 hours and 30 minutes, and always give 15 minutes for revision. Even if you know that all the questions are right, you must go through them once again so that your accuracy is maintained. So speed and accuracy both need to be taken care of in these days or a month before the examination. You have to be clear on what your speed is and whether you are accurate or not. So revision time must always be included when you solve a paper. And the last but not the least, rather the most important thing, is to study. So study 3 hours at a stretch, because the papers are going to be 3 hours each. So you must be in a habit of sitting for 3 hours at a stretch. And you should study at least 8 hours per day over the next 1 month. I think you will have to sacrifice a bit on the other activities for this 1 month, because this is a very important examination, and it always pays, right? So you giving up something for 1 month should not bother you too much. So give at least 8 hours per day. 8 to 10 hours is ideal time. When I say 8 to 10 hours, I am certain that when you put in those many hours, all of them will not be productive. When you put in 8 hours, probably 4 or 5 hours will be very productive, and the rest would not be as productive as the first 4 or 5 hours. So you need to have at least 6 hours of productive study each day to actually be a topper, one of the toppers in the class 10 board examination. So put in 8 to 10 hours per day. And when I say that you have to put in 8 to 10 hours per day of studies, I also say that you need to put in 8 hours of sleep. 8 hours of sleep, I think, are very important, because if you do not give your body proper rest, you will not be able to be very productive in those 8 hours in the morning when you are going to sit down to study. So make sure that you sleep for 8 hours each day. And there is another reason why I say that you must make it a habit to sleep 8 hours each day before 1 month before the examination, because of the anxiety that you are going to face right 1 day before the examination. And this is what we come to in the next slide. Now the next slide says that 1 day before the examination, you don't have to panic, and you also have to revisit a few things that are important. When I say don't panic, I mean to say that you have to trust your preparation. For 1 year, you have given your 100%. 1 year you have been true to yourself, you have given your 100% to the whole academics, or to the preparation for your mathematics paper. So now is the time to actually reap the rewards for your hard work. So do not get anxious and thinking that you will not be able to score, or worrying about how much you'll be able to score. Trust on the preparation that you have done. Trust on the fact that you have put in your 100%, and the next day is going to be the day when you are going to be rewarded for it. If that thought crosses your mind, that you are going to get rewarded the next day and are not going to be tested for your failures, or not going to be judged, but you are only going to be rewarded for the amount of effort, the amount of hard work that you have put in across to the whole year, you are going to feel good about it, okay? And for that, you need to get a good night's sleep. When I say take a good night's sleep, back in the time when I was preparing for my board examinations, I actually did not follow too much of a rigorous schedule. And what happened is, when I went to sleep at 10 o'clock in the night, I was not able to go to sleep till probably 2 o'clock in the night. And the next morning, I was feeling really drowsy. That was because throughout the last 1 month, before the examination, I used to slog. And when somebody slogs and doesn't put in the right amount of sleep in his schedule, you will not be able to go to sleep properly just 1 day before the examination. This good night's sleep is very important right before the examination, because when you are relaxed, when you have rested properly and you are relaxed, you will be able to give your best performance. So that is why I said that when you prepare 1 month before the examination, also include the 8 hours sleep in your schedule. There are lots of students who are going to include the 8 hours sleep in their schedule, but are not going to invest the efforts in putting in the 8 or 10 hours of study. So don't cheat yourself there. You have to be honest. So 8 hours of sleep and 8 to 10 hours of study per day, it's going to be sufficient for you to ace this particular examination. Keep the food light. Make sure that your tummy is not too full, and you don't have spicy and different kinds of foods, because an upset tummy on an examination day is not a good idea. Okay, so keep the food light, and that should also give you a proper sleep. That will help you in having proper sleep. So keep the food light right before the examination. uh, your parents would also suggest you, and I would also suggest you, that you close your books probably at 8 o'clock in the evening, right before the examination. And if you have to stay awake for another couple of hours, do not invest your time in watching TV or watching phones or doing regular chit chats. It will be a better idea to go out, have a walk, soothe your nerves, feel good about yourself, talk to yourself, and try to calm your mind a bit. So, taking a walk at 8 o'clock in the evening would definitely soothe your nerves. Keep the food light, take a good night's sleep, trust your preparation, and all of this is going to help you not panic in the examination. Okay? As for revisiting, I would say that if you get the time, do go through a few critical problems of the NCERT book, the important formula related to that particular subject. Since we are talking about maths here, do look at the important formula and results that you have. Do go through the critical topics like the Pythagoras theorem, the basic proportionality theorem, areas of similar triangles. There'll be other topics as well that your teachers might have told you about, or there'll be some topics that you're not very clear about but you would want to revisit once. So do take out time to do this. This is not the time for you to actually sit and practice a sample paper or a previous year paper. This is not the right time for it. You must do it before one day. So on the last day, the most that you need to do is look through the important formula, go through the NCERT problems, check out a few critical topics, and that should be it. This is what you need to do on the study front in the last 4 or 5 hours. In the morning, if you need to practice a few problems, do that, but do not take up sample papers or previous year papers just one day before the examination. All right. So this is how you do it. Now on the exam day, when you enter the examination hall, you get the paper. That is when the pulse rates are going to really shoot up. No matter how much you prepare, no matter how much of advice you get, you are going to get anxious, a bit anxious on the examination day, and it is totally fine. It is not just the case with you, but also with every other student who is taking this examination. Just take a look around on your left and right. Everybody will be feeling the same emotion. Okay, so that is a commonality, that is common. So everybody is going through it, so it is not going to be a differentiator. How you actually calm or soothe yourself down is going to be a differentiator. So when you get the paper, make sure that you read the instructions carefully, read the questions carefully before attempting any of them. Okay, because if you read the question incorrectly, start to solve the problem, and then midway you realize that this is not the problem that I had understood, then it's going to be a real big problem. So before attempting any question, just give yourself 15-30 seconds to actually look at the question, decide what your strategy or what methodology are you going to apply to solve this particular question. The second suggestion is to start with the higher questions and with your favorite topic, higher mark questions, which is section C or D. I would suggest this because whenever you have an examination such as the board examination, you tend to be a bit more careful, a bit too careful in the beginning. So the 1 mark questions are generally very easy. And since it is normal to actually slow down a bit in the first 5-10 minutes, there is every chance that you are going to overspend your time in the section A. So I would suggest that do not take up section A right in the beginning. Take up section C or section D. In fact, in 2018 paper, there were a couple of questions, especially heights and distance, which were very easy. I mean, 4 mark questions were for the taking. So if you attempt the section D first, you'll probably not be missing out on these easy questions. Okay, so start with the higher mark questions and always make sure that you take up the topic that you feel is your favorite or you are most confident in. Okay, so that is another tip that you should take. The third is be neat and be very clear. Now you have to understand that the examiner is going to be a regular guy like you and me who has probably 200 copies to check, and submit to the board. Now, if he gets a very dirty copy and if he gets a very clean, neatly done copy, you tell me, where is he going to invest his time more? He's obviously going to look in the paper which is very neat and clear, and he is going to award that half or 1 mark that he has within his reach. He would award to that person who is doing neat work and clear work. Also, in the board paper, you also given marks for steps, so you get stepwise marks. So if you're getting stepwise marks and if you're not very clear or not very neat with your work, there is every chance that you're not going to get those marks. So even if you're not able to solve the complete questions, if you're neat and if you're clean, there is every chance that you'll be able to secure a few step marks for that. So always be neat and be very clear in what you're writing. Be careful with your calculations. As I said, statistics is one chapter. Surface area and volumes is one chapter that is going to be heavy on calculations, and that's going to be around 10 or 12 marks. So you have to be careful with your calculations. Even if you do all the steps right, and if the answer is not correct, some marks are going to get deducted. So you need to be very careful with your calculations. If you have applied the right formula, right method, I think it will be really a sin to do some calculation mistake and lose out on marks. So be careful with that, and I hope you do revise at the end of the paper. That's why I said in a 3-hour paper, make sure that your paper gets finished in 2 hours and 45 minutes, and the last 15 minutes are reserved for revising. And this will happen only if you try to attempt the sample papers in 2 hours 30 minutes and keep 15 minutes for revision. If you are able to achieve this target of solving a sample paper or a previous year paper in 2 hours 30 minutes, you will be able to achieve the target of completing the paper in 2 hours 45 minutes, and then you get 15 minutes for your revision so that any calculation mistake can be rectified. Next tip is not to get stuck in questions. There are many times when you get stuck in questions, something doesn't strike us. So don't make it an ego issue. You're not going to be judged on just one question. So if you think you're getting stuck in a particular question, even though it might be of your strength areas, if you get stuck in the question, just leave that for some time. Go to the next page, try to attempt a different question. Maybe 10 minutes down the line, you might revisit that question, or you can revisit it during the revision time and try to solve it again. You will probably get the formula, probably get the error that you were not able to locate the first time you're solving the question, and that's why you are getting stuck. So do not spend a lot of time on one particular question if you're not able to solve it, even if it is within your strength area. Okay. And as I said, 15 minutes at the end must be reserved for revision, because you're bound to make a few mistakes, a few calculation mistakes. There will be a couple of questions where you will not be too sure about. So these 15 minutes are when you actually revisit those questions, revise your calculations, and rectify any mistake that you might have made. So these are a few very basic generic tricks, very basic generic tips that I needed to give for the exam day. And if you prepare accordingly, if you start in the right earnest right way, and you decide on a few broad level strategies that work for you, I think you'll be able to score well in the examination. Okay, so we'll be taking up lots of sample papers. urTutors is also coming up with a lot of sample papers and previous year paper video solutions. So make sure that you watch those. And any query, any question that you have related to your examination preparation, if you need any tips and tricks, if you had any query related to this particular session, I would again encourage you to drop in your comments, and your comments will be responded to. And all the best for the examinations, and hope to see you all succeed with flying colors. All the best. So this is Anurag Chandra signing off. Have a good day. Bye.